Hey there, cats and kittens, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the MonkeyBoy Presents the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, and today I'm happy to bring you issue number 88 in the series, Starman. And I'm sure a number of you are probably wondering who in the world this character is, especially this version of Starman. He is the third in his family to call himself Starman, but he is the, fifth or sixth in a number of different heroes in the DCU who have called themselves Starman. This magazine primarily focuses on the latest interpretation of the character, whose name was Jack Knight, but it also does briefly touch upon his father, who was the very first Starman in the DC Universe in the golden age of comic books, Ted Knight, who, as I said, was a member of the JSA, the Justice Society of America. It also briefly touches upon his older brother, David Knight, who was, well, I don't know if he was technically the second Starman, but he was the second Starman in the Knight family. And for those of you who are familiar with the character, you may recognize him from an appearance on the Justice League animated series, where he was one of the other versions of Starman that has existed in the DC Universe, an alien version of Starman. The Ted Knight version, though, the JSA, the original Golden Age version of Starman, did appear on an episode of Batman, the Brave and the Bold. So he has been out there, but not Jack, not this version, which, of course, the statue is based off of. So if you're not aware of this character, well, that's why we, of course, have the magazine, which we'll cover first, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about the character of Starman and this version of Starman, Jack Knight, and then we'll look at the figure itself, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is unfortunately not one of my favorite figures in this collection. Of all the versions of Starman they could have done, I wonder why they decided to do Jack, but of course we'll get there eventually. For now, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy issue number 88 of the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, Starman. First up, the character section. Where we are primarily introduced to Jack Knight, the third man in his family to go by the codename Starman. The magazine does briefly cover his father, Ted Knight, the very first Starman, who fought alongside the Justice Society of America in World War II. It also talks about Jack's older brother David, who took over as Starman when their father Ted retired. His health was declining rapidly and he was beginning to suffer from dementia, so he was bound and determined to erase Starman's legacy. Jack, the youngest son in the Knight family, was almost killed in an explosion, which was set by the Mist's children, his son Kyle and his daughter Nash. Talk about some of the allies that Jack has in his fight against crime, like the one-time supervillain turned hero known as the Shade. Jack would also encounter another hero who at one time was known as Starman, the alien Michael Thomas, who had retired to Opal City. We also learn that once a year, every year, Jack is visited by the spirit of his dead brother, and they just hang out. The Mist's daughter, Nash, was now seeking revenge against Jack for her brother's death, and she mutated herself to have powers similar to her father's. In an effort to continue her father's mission of ruining the Starman legacy, she drugged Jack instead of killing him, and conceived a child with him without his knowledge. Jack, meanwhile, had started a serious relationship with a woman named Jane Peyton, who in fact was the sister of a man named Will Peyton, another hero who at one point in time was known as Starman. That the villainous Mist returned one last time to destroy Jack Knight and the entire Knight family, threatening to destroy all of Opal City with a nuclear weapon, even going so far as to kill his own daughter when she protests, because the blast will kill her son as well. His father and almost losing a son he didn't even know he had, Jack decided to retire as Starman and handed over his cosmic rod to the teenager Courtney Whitmore, who was once known as the Star-Spangled Girl. Next, we look at a couple of Starman's classic stories. First up, we look at Starman, Sins of the Father. This story begins with the death of one Starman and ends with the birth of another, when we find David Knight, the second in the Knight family to carry the name of Starman, is gunned down by an assailant who turns out to be the son of the Golden Age villain, the Mist. Over the course of the story, we learn that the entire Knight family has been targeted by the Mist and his family, and that Jack Knight, the rebellious younger son who has avoided the whole superhero lifestyle his entire life, is forced to pick up the mantle of Starman in order to save his entire family. It's very well illustrated, and it's an interesting take on a reluctant new hero. We also look at Starman Omnibus. This is the final volume in the Starman saga, at least for Jack Knight. At the opening of the story, he returns to Opal City to find it under siege from numerous villains, led by his friend, supposed friend, the Shade. Over the course of the story, it's revealed that the Shade is being controlled by a villainous dwarf with magical powers known as Culp, and that even he is being manipulated by the villainous Mist, who has again decided to try and destroy Jack Knight and the entire Starman legacy. It's an epic story that ends with Ted Knight sacrificing himself to save not just his son, but all of Opal City, and also with Jack's retirement from the superheroing business so that he can care for his child, Kyle Theo. Jack Knight's Friends and Foes section features his father, Ted, and his brother, David, as the two previous incarnations of Starman, his friend and ally, the Shade, as well as the villainous Mist family. Finally, the iconography section looks at some of the other characters in the DCU who have gone by the name Starman. It looks one more time very briefly at the original Starman, Ted Knight. It also looks at Jack Knight's protege and wielder of the Cosmic Rod, Stargirl. The blue-skinned alien Michael Thomas in his prime as the cosmic hero, Starman. It tells more about Jane Peyton's older brother, Will, who also fought against supervillains under the moniker Starman. as well as another intergalactic Starman who fought against evil, but was also heir to an empire. Finally, we learn that Jack is still visited by the ghost of his brother David once a year, but that he is now joined by their father, Ted. And here we have the third hero to call himself Starman, Jack Knight. And, this is one of my least favorite characters in this collection, to be honest with you. And it's not the character's fault, it's just the statue's pretty boring. Of all the Starman characters, heroes they could have picked, they went with this one, and I would have preferred Ted, his dad, the Golden Age, especially since a lot of the other JSA characters we've received in this line have been the Golden Age versions. Alan Scott, Jay Garrick, even Dr. Midnight was the original version of Dr. Midnight, so I'm not sure why they went with Jack here. He's a very boring figure. There's not a lot going on, and I don't even think it really looks like Jack all that much either. That's another problem I have with it. He's too clean looking. I do like the jacket though, I have to point that out. I really love this detail on the back of the jacket. It's really cool. You'll see more of that in the upcoming section there, but it has his logo on the back, the big star, of course, and he does have some nice little details here and there. The gravity rod that he wields, his goggles are nice. He does have the Starman badge on the lapel of the jacket, and I do like the pose a lot. I think it's one of the more dynamic poses. That's why I'm sort of split on this guy. The pose is great, and the details are okay. He's just very boring. Very, very boring. He's overall, I think, a pretty disappointing figure, at least to me. I will talk about what I do like here in some more detail, though, along with some of the problems I have with this guy in the next section in just a moment. Starman stands atop the classic DC logo, and the underside of the base features his name and serial number. And to give you a sense of size and scale, here he is with every other member of the Justice Society of America that Eaglemoss has produced so far. Starman, for me, unfortunately, is one of the more disappointing figures in this collection. There's really not a whole lot to him. He is, unfortunately, very boring to look at, and of all the Starmen they could have picked out of the DC Universe, Jack here would have been my last choice. But that's not to say there isn't some good here on this figure, which of course we'll start with. I really love the pose. He is dynamic. He looks like he's in action. He looks like he's getting ready to fly, or he's charging into battle, and I love the way he is holding his gravity rod. I really like the details that are here, and the paint for the most part is very clean. I like, as I said, the pose, starting with the legs. You can see the pants are nicely detailed, his boots, there are treads on the bottom of the feet. The wrinkling in the pants is nice. They aren't, he wears street clothes. He's not a superhero like his father or his brother were. He doesn't wear spandex tights necessarily. He wears street clothes, which are really nicely detailed here. The belt on the pants, along with the buckle. The t-shirt is nice. It's wrinkled and crinkled and looks a little bit worn with some of the shadowing and shading. You can see the edges on the paint are very clean. The jacket is nicely detailed, and he also has the Starman badge, that sheriff's badge, which unfortunately isn't really coming through in pictures because it is so small, but believe me, the molding and the detail of that star symbol is there. His hands are nicely detailed. You can see every finger is molded. Nice wrinkling in his knuckles and his hands. They look well done. They look real. The flesh tone is nice. Also, the gravity rod has been nicely detailed. There's great paint on it, the nice gold flecking beveling along the rod itself, and the very end of it has that nice hook shape with some really cool detailing on that end. Also, the back of his jacket has that awesome zodiac symbol with every character in the Greek zodiac represented. It also has the big black star logo for Starman on the back as well, which is really cool. And the head sculpt is very nice. I like the chiseled jaw. I love the goggles. They're perfect with those green lenses. His hair is perfectly captured for the most part. And he has, again, really nice features. Great mouth, great nose, the ears, and especially the eyes have great detail. You can see they're big and brown. And he looks determined. He looks like a hero. On to the bad, which I feel equals the good on this figure, unfortunately. Starting with nitpicks first, the symbol on the back of the jacket is unfortunately a sticker. It's a decal, which explains why it looks so good. It would have been nice if they had tried to hand paint it, but I suppose I could see why they decided not to with all those little Zodiac characters. Also, the t-shirt is lacking in detail. Most of the time in the comic books, if you look, he has some sort of detail on that t-shirt, whether or not it's a simple design like a few lines, or some sort of symbolism going on, like characters or a little picture or something. To have just a plain t-shirt seems like a waste to me. Also, the head sculpt I also have a problem with. It's nice for what it is, but it doesn't look like Jack to me. He should have a goatee or some stubble. He should also have those long sideburns, like the pork chop sideburns, and he doesn't have them here. He reminds me more of Bruce Campbell, honestly, from the Evil Dead and Army of Darkness series, the character of Ash, and I can honestly say I think the artist that molded this character was inspired by Bruce Campbell, because it looks more like him than it does Jack. It really doesn't look like Jack Knight at all to me in the head sculpt. And I feel he's just a disappointing character overall. Finally, the Ugly. He is weakest at the base because he is only connected at the ball of that 1 foot, but believe it or not, he balances very well. He doesn't want to lean or fall over at all, but should he happen to fall over, he's also extremely fragile on the gravity rod, especially on the hooked end. It will snap very easily. Overall, I find Starman to be a pretty disappointing figure, honestly, and I can't recommend him for everyone. If you were going to skip over any figure in this collection, he would definitely be one I would say was okay to skip over. He is very bland, even though I really do like the pose a lot. It just doesn't look like Jack to me. And as I said, of all the Starmen that they could have done, I would have picked him last. There are other more colorful characters that were named Starman, especially his father Ted, or even his brother David. And when you look at the JSA that they've released so far, either one of them would have made more sense, since the majority of the JSA have been the Golden Age versions of those characters. He is, as I said, not for everyone. If you're going to skip anyone, Starman is the one to skip. Unfortunately, they can't all be winners, folks, but I hope you have enjoyed my review of issue number 88, Starman here. Please stay tuned for a quick teaser trailer of the next figure in the series. We're diving back into the Blackest Night, Brightest Day sub-series collection. It's another villain, which is always fun, and he is the first member to be featured as a part of the Yellow Lantern or Sinestro Corps, so stay tuned for that quick teaser. As always, I am your host, the Monkey Boy, aka Jay to his friends. Thanks for watching.